Good evening, viewers. Natai here with another video for all of you. Long before I began engrossed in Pokemon, monsters were something that simultaneously fascinated and horrified me as a child. Yeah, your vampires, your werewolves slash wolfmans, and your zombies, but everyone's always heard about those monsters, especially around October. The monsters I want to talk to you about are ones you've probably never heard of. Trust me, humanity has no shortage of things that go bump in the night. Up in the lands of the Antarctic, the Inuits had a multitude of monsters. One of them was Aklet, a spirit that preyed on villages. He would start out in the form of an orca, then became a wolf when he came out onto land, looking for people to eat. Sometimes it was said to take the form of both animals. It honestly seems kinda dumb on Aklet's part. I mean, you want to catch lone humans you can find. Cold, lonesome wilderness without the possibility of any help. While they may be wary of a wolf, you definitely think something was up if they saw a wolf-shaped orca walking around. Another monster from the Antarctic is the Quillipalak, a malevolent water spirit that abducts disobedient children. They lurk under frozen chunks of ice during the spring, waiting for children to get close enough so they can grab them and pull them under the surface. Like any good boogeyman, it's uncertain what they do with the children they capture. Some legends say they eat the children they catch. Some say they feed off the youth of children to extend their unnaturally long lives. One way kids can avoid this monster, however, is the fact that they tend to give themselves away via low humming. It's good to be attacked by the monster to lure children close to breaks in the ice, but it's likely that any intelligent child will identify the humming and avoid the trap. From monsters that prey on children, the rest of the spirits of children from Scandinavian mythology. Mylings come to existence when an unbaptized child is either abandoned or killed by its mother and comes back as an emaciated spirit longing for a proper burial. They're said to haunt wherever they died, whether it be the woods, the rivers where they were drowned, or abandoned houses, simply because the rest of the family moved without taking the child. Now, while you might feel pity for these miserable creatures as anyone would, they are indeed things to be avoided. If you encounter one in the dark of the night, it'll ask to be carried to the local cemetery so it can be laid to rest properly. However, this is all a clever trap, as it will grow heavier and heavier the longer the journey goes on. And if you're unable to reach the cemetery by sunrise, the mailing will crush you under its weight. Hey, wanna hear something fucked up? This next monster was most likely used as a cautionary tale to discourage incestuous behavior amongst royalty. According to Arthurian legend, a princess lusted after her brother and slept with a devil that would promise to get the boy to love her in return. I'm sure he can be trusted. Next thing you know, the princess goes to her father the king and says that her brother raped her, and as punishment the king has his son savagely attacked by dogs. Oh no, the devil wasn't to be trusted at all and bewitched the girl. Who could have foreseen that? In response to his gruesome punishment, the prince cursed his sister's child to be born in an abomination. And thus we have the questing beast here, with the body of a leopard, head and tail of a serpent, legs of a lion, and hooved feet of a stag. First the Jersey Devil, now this. What is it with all these awesome chimeras being cursed babies? The squonk from old stories told by lumberjacks in the early days of America isn't as much a monster as it is an embodiment of pure misery. Why? Because not only is the squonk the ugliest creature to exist, due to having moles, wrinkles, and warts all over its body, it's also aware of just how visually repulsive it is and sobs brokenly and endlessly. Squonks generally don't want to be found, so they hide away in the deepest parts of the forest, and since they can't bear to look at themselves, you know there's absolutely no reproduction going on. And yet it seems that irony is a cruel mistress, denying the squonk extinction. Whenever hunters are able to catch a squonk in a burlap sack, the squonk will dissolve into its own tears. However, it will re-solidify once the hunter has moved on. So, while I was looking up pictures for this video, I was made aware of a game called Doodle World. Here the squonk inspired an entire species. Despite how hideous I find the overworld graphics, I'm now tempted to play the game, if only so I can have my own squonk, lizard, and squirpiruli. Told myself I wasn't gonna talk about werewolves. However, I feel this is a creature that's similar enough. The poppy. I know there's more of this creature's name than that, but in all honesty, it's impossible for me to pronounce. The Bobby is believed to be a manifestation of black magic used by people in Java to become immediately rich. Believe it or not, humanity did a lot of things to obtain immediate wealth before internet scams were a thing. The practitioners of this dark magic did indeed obtain wealth, but then they would be cursed to either transform into boars or were possessed by boar demons. Some that say that people would intentionally trigger this transformation by enveloping themselves in a black robe, go rampaging around their village in the form of a boar, before it would return home and resume human form, with the loot safely tucked inside the robe. Additionally, anyone who wanted to commit burglary as a Bobby couldn't work alone, needing an assistant to guard a candle that would indicate how well the thief was doing. If the candle faded or went out, it was an indication that the Bobby had been captured and either been killed or forced to resume its human form. Although I can assume they were killed afterwards, since they've been practicing witchcraft and whatnot. I mean, who wants someone who practices dark magic in their community? Not done with the jungle just yet, since now we have the Yahoo from Indonesia. This cryptid is said to be some sort of primate creature with the wings of a bat, often depicted as a giant ape or a monkey. They normally eat wild game such as deer and big fish, but they can hardly be blamed when some tasty looking and easy to fly away with humans enter their jungle. He thinks Dorothy wouldn't have survived her encounter with these flying monkeys. In the 1900s, scientists actually claimed to have seen these creatures twice, though they very easily could have misidentified fruit bats. I mean, they're also called megabats for a reason, you know. While we're on the subject of flying fiends, allow me to introduce you to the Paisa bird, or just the Paisa as it's sometimes called, because there's no way in hell that anyone could mistake this thing for a bird. I mean, yeah, it's got feathered wings and bird feet. It's also got this vaguely human-esque face and antlers. There actually isn't a whole lot to say about this beastie. I just thought it was kinda neat and would show it to you guys. There's a lot to say about this next freaky flyer, however. La Lechuza translates to the owl in Spanish, and this beastly bird is said to lurk around in Mexico, as well as on the borders of Texas. Great as we need an immigrant monster. Owls have always been kind of creepy, with their eyes that glow in the dark, and how silently they move around in the night. And there have always been creepy stories, myths, and legends involving these nocturnal aliens, although these are just regular sized owls. La Lechuza is a large owl with the face of an old woman, thought to be the cursed form of a witch, returned to haunt and torment mortals, or the spirit of a mother who lost her child to a drunk driver. Why she came back as an owl is anyone's guess, really. But hey, if you're gonna come back as any sort of bird, an owl is pretty much the second coolest one out there. Although, since Lechuza is said to attack drunkards, that gives me the mental image of this giant owl hanging around bars, which is simultaneously hilarious and horrifying if I'm to be honest. Scarecrows are freaky. I don't think the story Herald did them any favors, and the Bubak from Czech folklore certainly didn't. While your standard scarecrow is made of straw, spare clothes, and a pole, the Bubak resembles half a skeleton sticking out of the ground by its spinal cord. It usually hangs around in old abandoned fields, but will also hang around riverbanks and in ditches, waiting for that unsuspecting nighttime traveler to happen by, so it can pounce upon them and absorb their soul. And it spots a potential victim. It mimics the cry of an abandoned child, luring its prey to come closer. So between this and the my name from earlier, I think the lesson here is if you hear a crying child in the night, best to ignore it and go about your own business. Stop me if you've heard this one. A scientist is caught in a lab accident that transforms his mind and body and becomes a horrendous mutant with zero motivation behind the atrocities he commits. Apart from being a recurring villain for Shazam and a few webcomics that are out there, I don't feel the Goatman of Maryland has got a whole lot of notoriety since the 1970s. All supposed sightings of the Goatman are limited to teenagers he allegedly assaults on Lover's Lane with an axe. He's also been blamed for the deaths of pets that have been left out in the yard unattended, as well as blamed for the remains of 14 hikers that were found hacked to pieces. Now this monster, this one really creeps me out. And it isn't even known to be harmful towards humans. The Dover Demon was sighted in April of 1977 in Dover, Massachusetts. The creature is basically as close to a gray alien as you can get without actually being a gray alien. Who knows, maybe it is. What we do know about the Dover Demon is that it's freaky as hell. That big head, those luminescent eyes, the bony skeletal hands and feet that leave indentations in whatever they touch. Yeah, no, don't like that. Don't like that at all. I actually have to wonder, how long do you think the teenagers who drew the original picture of this creature had nightmares for? So we can argue about whether or not all the creatures we've talked about so far are real. They were considered real once upon a time. I'm not going to say that the cultures these creatures come from still do believe in them, but for the most part, a lot of them are cautionary tales. The Dover Demon, however, yeah, I have no problem believing that thing is real. Every morning when I'm out walking the dog, constantly worried that I'm gonna see this thing staring out at us from the more wooded area of the park. And lastly, we come to a monster I really feel none of you have heard about, considering it only had a limited amount of time in the spotlight in 1950. The monster I'm talking about is the Flatwoods Monster from West Virginia. I'm pretty sure that this and that song by... Hold on, let me check. John Denver. Yep. I'm pretty sure that this and that song by John Denver are the only things people know West Virginia for. On September 12th, a bright object was seen flying out of the sky, close to the property of a couple of farmers, causing more people to go investigate. What they saw horrified them. What they seemed to be the eyes of a roosting owl from a distance, in actuality belonged to a creature that might have well towered over them. It allegedly had red skin, a rounded head, and long, thin arms that ended in two fingered hands. The creature also allegedly wore a spade-shaped collar and an almost metallic dress that resembled a trash can and emitted a green gas. So, like any sensible person would, they ran for their lives. That was the first and only time anyone saw what would then be dubbed the Flatwoods Monster. Which is honestly a shame, considering the description is way more interesting than just a man-shaped animal like a lot of these cryptids are now. The description plus the circumstances of its sighting make it sound like it was potentially an alien, and maybe it was. Maybe that's why it was never seen again after its first sighting. Perhaps it was simply a space traveler that crash-landed on an alien planet and departed for the deep reaches of the universe the same night it was sighted. If so, I say Godspeed unto thee, spaceman. Godspeed. Well, folks, that's all I've got for this video. Heard any of these monsters before? Do they sound interesting? Think any of them could be real? This is Night Eyes saying thanks for letting me share my thoughts, share yours with me, and have a happy Halloween.